I've personally been challenged in presenting to international audiences. I'm an Australian and I'm living in Europe. I work with people from all over the world, and each culture has a different way of communicating with each other. There are different cultural rules from when you speak to Spanish people, to Americans, to Singaporeans, to people from India. There's loads of different ways. We are all these days using English in a business level of English. We've all got our accents that not everyone understands, but there's a common level of English that we do speak. To be heard and to be understood by an international audience, I find I slow down. I slow down with what I say so that people understand what I'm saying, because they're not so used to an Australian accent. American accents we hear on the movies, British accents we hear at the movies, so we're more attuned to it. But Australian accents or Indian accents or Asian accents speaking English, one must really slow down. The second thing is using, I guess, generic English. That's English with words that people will generally understand. Even though we all speak English, there are certain words, for instance, that we use in Australia that don't get used anywhere else. I leave those words out. There are certain words that Americans don't use that British people use, which I am quite surprised about, but that's the case. So being aware that if you paint a story with what you're saying, then if people don't quite understand the word, they'll understand the sentiment of what you're trying to communicate. The third thing I find with communicating with international audiences is actually to always give a chance for people to have comment or to ask questions. That can be culturally different. I was presenting at actually in Hungary a few years ago, and in Hungary it wasn't, at that time, it wasn't such common practice to have an audience openly ask questions, because it culturally wasn't something you did. So when I asked any questions, there of course weren't any, but they all wanted to ask me one-on-one questions afterwards. So to be aware of what some of those cultural differences can be when communicating. So they're the three examples I would give. Speak slowly, speak simply, and give room to ask questions.